The Detroit Pistons waste an opportunity to get back to 500 at the Chicago Bulls, defeat them, and expose a glaring weakness within their defense. We'll discuss what that is in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Make sure you also head over to LockedOnDaily.com. Type in your email and you'll get a Locked On Pistons daily newsletter with your Locked On Pistons daily podcast. We are 9th in the NBA, Locked On NBA channel when it comes to subscribers for the Locked On Pistons daily newsletter. We need to be in the top 5, so if you haven't already, go over there and enter in your email. Also, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win. My goodness, to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. So in today's episode, I want to talk about Cade Cunningham's shot diet. I think it's showing a bit of change this year. I want to dissect that and really get into that. And then also I want to talk about later what beef stew Isaiah Stewart's role needs to be moving forward for the Detroit Pistons. But obviously, to start off, we are going to recap this loss to the Chicago Bulls and what caused this loss for the Detroit Pistons. This is one of those losses that really hurts because the Pistons had a chance to get back to 500 against an opponent that I'm sure they feel like another opponent that they feel like they're better than and they should defeat. And the Pistons, coughed up this opportunity. And the Bulls, to be honest, I felt like were pretty much in control of this game from the get-go. And the Pistons, who were ranked 6th, I believe, defensively, heading into this game, got absolutely exposed within this game, and a repeated glaring issue defensively got exposed. And look, I don't like having to do what I'm about to do. I don't like having to do this. I want to say this. I know he's a fan of the podcast. He had a fun night offensively. He did. He had a fun night offensively, especially in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, he had a fun night offensively. However, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't come on here and be honest and break down the game, what we just watched. The 100% main reason why the Detroit Pistons lost this game to the Chicago Bulls is their inability to guard 5-out offenses and Jalen Duren's inability to guard stretch bigs. And everything, that's like the root of the problem. Everything stems out. Everything else within the defense stems from that core issue. You don't believe me? Let's go ahead and break down what happened, what JB Bickerstaff tried to do, multiple different things he tried to do within this game to cover for that weakness. In this game, Nikola Vucevic had 29 points, 11 of 18 from the field, 6 of 8 from 3. The Chicago Bulls shot 23 of 46 from 3 within this game. Now, Zach LaVine went nuclear in the fourth quarter. That is true. A lot of those were contested. Zach LaVine's takeoff in the fourth quarter was true. However, quarters 1 through 3, the reason why the Pistons couldn't build a 10-plus point lead, the reason why the Detroit Pistons couldn't take control of a game that when Cade was having a really good game offensively, they hit 15 threes within, the reason why they didn't have a lead entering into the fourth quarter was because of their defensive play from quarter 1 to quarter 3 and their inability to guard the Chicago Bulls 5-out offense and their inability to guard Nikola Vucevic and, even for a spurt, their inability to guard their other stretch 5 and Jalen Smith. I have to break this down. Within the first quarter, so the Pistons, to start off the game, the Pistons are in drop coverage. And their initial coverage on Vucevic within their half-court defense was they're going to run drop coverage and then they'll recover back out to him at the three-point line. He was immediately making them pay with that because Duren, in the drop coverage, when they kick it back out to Vucevic, his closeouts just weren't strong enough. And you saw the difference between the closeouts between Duren and Stu when they were in the game. When Stu was in the game, a lot tougher to get those threes off. But with Duren in the game, they were just teeing off from 3. So that was causing mega issues for the Pistons. Vucevic, I forget how many threes he hit in the first quarter. NBA.com's not letting me sort by quarter yet, but we can go through real quickly. Vucevic started off the game with a three. Vucevic fadeaway jumper. Vucevic tip layup. Vucevic another three-pointer. Like, that's all within the first 5 minutes of the game. Vucevic another three-pointer. That's 13 points in the first quarter for Vucevic. Another three from Jalen Smith. That's multiple. That's about 5 threes in the first quarter, all from Bulls big men. And it continued on throughout the rest of the game. Again, it wasn't just from them hitting threes. So that was the initial coverage that the Pistons were trying to do. Then they tried to switch to just full-on switching across the board. And what that caused was Vucevic now getting layups. Them having to now double Vucevic under the rim, which created open threes for other players, which now led to Vucevic getting free throws. Piston players having to foul him. That's what that led to. So they couldn't do that. And then also, there was multiple possessions where when they switched across the board, it wasn't just Vucevic killing them. They then went to Kobe White, and then Kobe White attacked the switch on Duren. So then that wasn't working. Then, this is all within, mind you, this is all within one half. JB Bickerstaff were searching for an answer for this. The third strategy they did, they went ahead and tried to go into some drop coverage, and then they tried to have the weak side defender rotate one position over. So what that means is, so let's say there's a pick and roll on the left wing or at the top of the key. Okay, and let's say Kobe White's flowing to the left side of the floor, coming off the screen. Duren's in drop coverage. The defenders who are guarding the wing on the opposite wing in the opposite corner, the guy in the opposite wing is going to rotate to Vucevic popping. The opposite corner is going to rotate to then that wing defender's player, and then Duren's going to chase across the court to the corner. That was the third defensive strategy that JB tried within this game. And that one got exposed because, one, either they were too late on the rotations across the board and guys weren't executing the rotations, or two, which we saw both of these happen on almost back-to-back-to-back possessions, that happened, or Duren didn't get to the corner in time and they got an open three from the corner. It was every single bit of the Bulls' offense stemmed from the fact that the Pistons could not guard Vucevic popping from the floor, popping in the pick and roll. They could not stop it. They had no chance at doing it, and everything for the Bulls' offense was coming off of that action. Everything was predicated on them, the Pistons' inability to guard that action. And something we've talked about on the podcast since preseason game 1. When Jalen Duren goes against interior big men, his defense looks improved. He gets to be around the basket. He looks like a better rim protector. He's more active around there. He's a better defensive rebounder. That stuff looks improved. When he goes against a stretch big, it has been absolute kryptonite for the Pistons. It was kryptonite in the preseason against Brook Lopez. It was kryptonite against Cat in the New York Knicks, and it absolutely was getting exposed here against Chicago Bulls. And again, it got shown off against Milwaukee just a few nights ago against Brook Lopez, getting trailing threes, getting threes from the top of the key. When the Pistons go against stretch bigs, it is absolutely 100% their kryptonite. And it is the main reason why they lost this game. 100% top of the board reason why they lost this game. They just could not find out a way to guard this. And a lot of it just simply boils down to Jalen Duren's inability to do so. So I know he had 15 points, 22 rebounds in this game on his 21st birthday. Happy birthday, Jalen Duren. But just looking at the box score, if you watch this game, you know what the issue was. You know what the issue was. And look, I already saw the quote from JB Bickerstaff after the game. He says, we want our bigs to be in the paint as much as they can to help protect the rim. Vooch puts a lot of stress on your defense with that. That is JB Bickerstaff just going to bat for his guy. That is just protecting Duren. He's not going to go out in the press conference and call Duren out. His actions throughout the game pointed to him that's not the case. Because if that was the case, they would have stayed within their defense and just lived with Vucevic hitting threes. They didn't want Vucevic getting this many open threes. They didn't want the Bulls to continue getting open threes every single possession. That's not what they did. By the way, I didn't even mention what their fourth defensive strategy was. In the third quarter, they straight up just put Tobias Harris on Vucevic and then put Duren on Pat Williams. Like that was their switch. That was their defensive strategy. If their strategy was we just want Duren by the rim, we want our bigs at the rim, they wouldn't have done that. That's simply JB going to bat for his guy in the press conference and not throwing him under the bus. But the actions did not match that. By the way, them putting Tobias just on Nikola Vucevic just led to Nikola Vucevic getting back-to-back offensive rebounds, getting an and one. Like, That's the kind that's what's happening. And all of it, again, that's all stemming from them searching for a way to guard Vucevic in the pick and roll. And it all stems from the Pistons' inability to guard 5-out offenses. If you guys look at my phone, look at my notes. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, I'll explain it on podcast as well. You guys can see, these are plays I have written right here. I'm going to be doing a breakdown of the Pistons' defense against the Bulls' offense. When the Pistons, and we'll wrap it up here. JB Bickerstaff has done an absolutely phenomenal job getting the most out of these defenders for the Pistons. I've said it over and over again. The Pistons do not have that many good individual defenders on their team. They don't have a lot of defensive talent. But JB Bickerstaff is doing a fantastic job to get the absolute most and more out of them. However, when you go against a 5-out offense, you are going to get exposed. You are going to get exposed when you lack individual defensive talent because it requires more ground to cover. You can't help as much. There was a play, if you can see right here on my notes, I have made layup as the second play. There was a play in the second quarter where Vucevic is at the top of the key. All 5 Bulls players are beyond the key. Jalen Duren's guarding Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic goes over, dribbles over to the right side of the floor to, I believe, run a DHO. But because Vucevic has now hit 5 threes within the first 13 minutes of the game, Duren is playing aggressive as hell on him. And what does that lead to? There is nobody within the three-point line. Nobody. Not a single Pistons defender, not a single Bulls player. So all it takes is a simple back cut. You lob it over the top. There's no one to meet him at the rim. And the Pistons, I believe it was Kobe White. Kobe White got a wide open layup. That's something that the Pistons have happened to them constantly against 5-out offenses. They can't guard stretch bigs. And because of their inability to guard stretch bigs, everything else opens up off of that, and it just becomes 5 shots form shooting for the Bulls. Last thing I want to say is this. The Bulls made 23 of 46 from 3. They were hot, yes. And Levine in the fourth quarter hit multiple contested threes. He just went nuclear and closed the Pistons out. Can't do much about that. But everything from quarter 1 to quarter 3, you give any team that many wide open looks, you cannot live with the process. You cannot come away saying, oh, this was a team just hot from 3. That's lying to yourself. You gave them 5 shots form shooting almost every single possession. There was a play in the third quarter where Vucevic walked into a wide open 3 at the top of the key, and Duren is sitting underneath the rim. I'm not joking. He's wide open at the top of the key. There is another play in the second quarter where Vucevic gets a wide open 3 at the top of the key again, and Duren, I believe, pulls, who is it? Who's the player that, who's the other big man that does this? I forget who it is, man. It was a viral video of just compilation of him doing this. When a guy shoots a 3, you're nowhere close to him, but he jumps in the air and claps from like from the middle of the paint, like he can block it from there to try to distract him. He did something like that, because Vucevic had about 10 feet of space. Were the Bulls hot? Yes, but if you give every team wide open 3s to good 3-point shooters all game, they're going to get hot. They're going to get hot, and you can't live with that process. You can't say, oh, they just got hot when you're just giving them open 3s. That's not good process. Bad process led to bad results. And every time the Pistons go against a 5-out offense in the stretch big, this is what happens. I will have a film breakdown hopefully tomorrow done in the afternoon, breaking down what I'm talking about so you guys can see exactly what I'm referencing on my YouTube channel at Kuka Hill. But look, Duren had a nice double-double, had a fun offensive night, especially in the fourth quarter. But everyone is going to be lying to themselves. I feel like everything I've seen makes me believe that everyone also sees this. And JB Bickerstaff obviously saw this because he went to 5 different defensive coverages in the first 3 quarters to try and make up for it. The Pistons need their big men to get better at defending stretch bigs, or they will continue to lose every single time they go against one. Every single time. You can't have your entire defense get broken down simply because a 5-man can hit a 3. Just can't happen. That was a long first segment, but I had to go in. But let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. How do you guys feel about this? You guys agree, disagree with the issues here for the Pistons defensively? Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, I want to talk about Cade's shot diet. I think it's an interesting discussion. We'll break it down when we come back. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You can just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get on action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. PrizePicks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Head over to PrizePicks, download the app today. And download the app today, and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today, use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Head over to LockedOnDaily.com, enter in your email, and get a Locked On Daily Pistons newsletter every single day with your podcast. And also text the number down below, 313-914-6528. If you want to join the Locked On Pistons Insiders program, where I will be basically your insider for you. You can text with me one-on-one. You get 14 days free just to try out the program. If you like, you can stick around. If not, you can move on. You get 14 days free. You can test it out. Talk with me one-on-one. Get text straight to your phone from me. Piston news, rumors, insight, anything. You guys will get sent straight to your phone from me. For those of you who don't have Twitter or social media and want to be kept up to date with what's going on, I got you. So again, 14 days free. If you don't like it, you can move on. But I want to get into Cade Cunningham's shot diet, which I think you are starting to see a change in it through, they're 7-9. They're 7-9 now. So yes, through 16 games, you are seeing a difference, a concerted effort to change up Cade's shot diet. Last year, we all know that Cade loved taking pull-up twos. Everyone knows that Cade, one of Cade's, what people reference as his bread and butter, is his pull-up midi. Is how good he is as a shooter in the mid-range. And I still think he's that. I don't think he's shooting as well this year on pull-up twos as he'd like, but we have a large enough sample size to know that that's going to adjust itself and revert back to the mean percentage-wise. But he's not shooting as many of them as this year. Not shooting as many of them. So, for example, last year, and this is not including tonight, but we'll talk about tonight as well, but last year, 15% of Cade's shots came from within 10 to 16 feet. This year, it's down to 13%. 10% of his shots came from 16 to 3-point area. Only 6% are coming from that area this year. To move on, to add even more stats to that, Cade this year, on pull-up two-pointers, he's taking 5.3 pull-up twos this year, or last year he did, on 47%. This year, he's only taking 4.1 attempts on 42% shooting this year. So he's shooting worse on pull-up twos, and he's also shooting way less than he did last year. What does he replace that with now? Well, last year, he only took 2 pull-up threes a game, and he shot 32.5% on those. And all offseason, I told you guys that a main part of Cade's game that had to show up this year, I told you guys that it was a part of his game that he had spent working on all offseason, that he knew he needed to add to his game, was his pull-up threes. He needed to have some gravity as a pull-up three-point shooter, and when guys went under screens, have the ability to hit step-back threes, he needs to be able to do all of that and turn some of those long twos into threes. And that is exactly what he's done. This year, he is having 4.0 pull-up three-pointers, and he's shooting nearly 35% on them. Now, tonight, that number will raise. He shot 4 of 7 from deep tonight. I believe he hit 2 pull-up threes in this one. So that number will go even higher. So he's traded a lot of those long twos for three-pointers. And he's traded some of the middies for just looks at the rim. So, for example, last year, from 0 to 3 feet, 17% of Cade's shots came within 0 to 3 feet. This year, it's up to 21%. So he's taking away the pull-up twos, and he's trying to add more layups and potential free throws, and also add three-point shots. Now, I'll say this. Do I agree with the strategy for Cade? Do I think it's a good strategy for him to try to eliminate some of his pull-up middies and turn those looks into layups and turn them into three-point shots? I think it's on its face, yes. I think it's a good change for him. I think Cade's going to be a good three-point shooter. I think he is a good three-point shooter. He's struggling right now as a finisher, and he hasn't been a great finisher throughout his career. He did have 9 free throws in this game against the Chicago Bulls, and I know that's a concerted effort as well to turn some of these looks into free throw attempts. He knows he has to turn a lot of these shots into free throw attempts. That's going to be his key to being a much more efficient player. So I can understand that. And he gets a really bad whistle. So I understand why that also may have the stats looking a little worse right now with the shot diet, because a lot of those looks that he's turning into looks at the rim aren't translating to free throws. Now, in this game against the Bulls, it did. But for the most of the year, he has not been able to get the calls that he wants, which is making his efficiency look even worse. Our friend of the podcast, Hal, had a whole thread on Twitter discussing just how one call a game would raise his true shooting, I believe, like 2 percentage points. So he'd be infinitely more efficient if he just got one more call a game. So that's how big of a deal getting to the free throw line, how your whistle is with the refs, how much that can change your efficiency. However, with all that said, I'm on board with it, basically is what I'm saying. I'm on board with taking a lot more pull-up threes. I've been wanting it. And if you want to get more free throw attempts, take more looks at the rim, I can get on board with that as well. However, there needs to be, I feel like, a better balance with this. Because one of Cade's superhero things is how good he was on mid-rangers this past year. Last year, I believe he shot 50.1% on pull-up middies. I can double check that. I'll get back to you guys on that. Yeah, from 10 to 16 feet, he shot 53% on pull-up twos. Like, that is it has been one of his best assets to his game, his pull-up twos. So, and I feel like especially in this game against the Bulls, and across other games, teams are giving him that shot still. That's going to be a shot that defenses want you taking, yes, because the mid-range is not an efficient shot. For most players, it's not. For Cade, that is his shot. That is an efficient shot for him. That is a good shot for him. If defense are going to give him that shot, he should take it. Do I want him having his entire diet just those shots? No. And I understand it being, more, modern and smarter and, more analytically driven. And I agree with it to an extent. I do, to trade some of those middies for threes and layups. Those are the more efficient shots in basketball. I get it. However, I feel like there's times where I feel like he's passing up those open middies for tougher shots, maybe at the rim for himself. And I understand he's trying to turn those into free throws. I get it. And I don't think he's been, he had that rough 2-3 game stretch where he had really bad shooting percentage. But I don't think he's been too terribly different efficiency-wise this year, despite his changes to a shot diet. I know he understands he needs to be more efficient. I think eventually as the year goes on, you need to find a better balance here with, how many mid-range shots he wants to be giving up. When the defense is giving it to you and you have a wide, like there was 2 possessions in the third quarter tonight where the Bulls just straight up didn't guard him at the mid. He came off an off a pick and roll screen, had a wide open midi, didn't take it, tried to get closer to the rim, and ended up picking his dribble up and trying to kick it out. Again, I get that he's trying to turn some of these shots into more efficient shots, but for players like him, players like Kawhi, players like KD, players like DeMar DeRozan, players like that, Jalen Brunson, guys like that, and Cade, those are good shots. So trade some of those, keep taking your pull-up threes, keep trying to get to the free throw line, make that an emphasis, but don't just give up on the mid-range shot that makes you special. That's what has made Cade unique, what has made him different from these other players, his ability to be a 3-level scorer. You wanted him to add the pull-up three-point shot. You wanted him to add get to the free throw line a little bit more because he already had one level of the floor to his game, that mid-range shot. You don't want that shot completely taken away in this from his game. So it's an interesting thing I'm watching for the rest of the year because you can clearly see that it's a concerted effort by him. It's a very concerted effort by him to turn these looks into threes and layups. So I'm really interested to see how he tries to continue to balance that moving forward. Again, in games when he shoots 4 of 7 from deep and has 9 free throw attempts in a game, I mean, it works fine. He had 26 points and 17 shots. That's exactly why you wanted to trade those shots for those looks. You score in a lot better efficiency in points per shot. Way better. Obviously, 26 points, 17 attempts. But I feel like he even could have had more points in this game if he would have taken some of those shots the defense gave him from mid-range. And I think throughout other games, he's kind of passed those shots up to try to get closer to the rim and try to draw a foul, and he just hasn't been rewarded the shot. So the to be honest, the pull-up threes I don't have much of a problem with. I don't think those are taken away from his, as much from his pull-up middies. I think more so he's trying to get free throws, and the refs aren't really giving it to him, and it's making his efficiency look worse. So it really is a tough balancing act to have, man. It's tough because you don't want to tell him, stop trying to get free throws. You don't want that to be the case. You want him to continue to get to the rim. You want him to try to draw free throws. But you also, again, don't want to take the part of his game that makes him special. So, again, I think it's something that you should be watching for every game from here on out. Cade's playing great. Cade's playing exceptional. He had 26 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds tonight. 8 of 17 shooting, 4 of 7 from deep. He missed 3 free throws, which can't happen. I don't know what's going on with him in the free throw line, but 6 of 9 from the free throw line, has to hit all of his free throws. But he played really well. It's just I'm really interested in seeing how he handles when and when not to shoot his middies, because that is a big part of his game he needs to hold on to. So let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about this. Should he continue to take more pull-up middies, or do you like the change in his shot diet, or do you think there can be a little bit more of both here? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, I want to talk about Isaiah Stewart's role. Honestly, in this game, he only played 19 minutes. He needs to have a much larger role, I think, for the Detroit Pistons moving forward. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. As I've told you guys many times, I've been using FanDuel for a few years now. It's super easy to use, super self-explanatory, and most importantly, it's just super fun to use. I use it on Sunday night or on Sunday football. I use it today when I'm recording this on Monday Night Football. You can use it any day of the week. Super fun to use. I recommend you guys check it out. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Subscribe to all that other stuff. You guys already know what I'm talking about. Locked On Pistons Daily Newsletter, the Insiders Program, my personal YouTube at Kuka Hill, all that stuff. I really would appreciate it. A great way to support me and the podcast. But Isaiah Stewart, this is a player that, for those of you guys who have listened to the podcast for more than 2 years, that I've done a complete 180 on. I was not a big fan of Stu's game a few years ago, but I am now completely convinced and all in on him as a player, especially within his new role as a backup 5. I think that's where he needs to be, especially not as a power forward. I think he is a center. So they have him playing in his rightful role, and you're getting that value out of him. So I think that has a lot to do with why I feel much better about him. I'm so much more in on his game. And, I didn't think I'd ever find myself, 2 years ago, I don't think I'd ever find myself saying this, but Stu needs to be more involved even than he is right now. So in this game, Jalen Duren had 30 minutes played. Isaiah Stewart had 19 minutes played. And again, I know that Jalen Duren had 22 rebounds. I know that he had 15 points. I know he had 12 offensive rebounds. In that fourth quarter, he played well offensively. And overall, offensively, we know that Jalen Duren's immensely talented. I've said this over and over on the podcast. Offensively, Jalen Duren is very talented. He is a very talented offensive player. However, like we talked about in the first segment, the defense is what's the difference maker here for the Detroit Pistons. It was when they played their best last year, that first few games where their defense was hidden, When they've played well, they are 7-9 this year. It's not because of their offense. It's because they were 6th in defense heading into this game. Defense is what's making them win games. Defense is where the impact is felt. And especially in games like this, I think that JB Bickerstaff, and I'm going to assume there's probably some optics at play here, personalities within the locker room, all that kind of stuff plays into coaching decisions. It's not 2K. It's not a video game where you can just do whatever and not worry about what could come of it. You have to take all that stuff into consideration. I understand that. However, especially in games like this against the Chicago Bulls, where the Pistons are guarding a stretch 5, either Stu needs to be right even with Duren in minutes, or he needs to play more than Duren in games like this. There's no way that that Stu should have only played 19 minutes within this game. None. And I understand this. JB was trying to find a defensive answer with Duren on the floor so he could, I'm sure this is partly to try to develop Duren, obviously, to try to find an answer for Duren so the answer doesn't have to be just sit him. I'm sure JB Bickerstaff in the front office probably would not like or would rather them find a solution for Duren against this kind of offense and the answer not be just sit him on the floor and play someone else. They want him to develop and get better at this and find a coverage that works. And that's what JB did for the majority of this game. There's like 5 different coverages. Kept trying over and over and over and over again to try something that could make it work. And it just wasn't working. It just wasn't. And we've seen it not work all season, all the way back to preseason. We know this. I think everyone knows that this is the Pistons' kryptonite, that they can't guard stretch bigs with their current starting 5. That's just the simple truth. I'm just being honest. That's just me being truthful. So in games like this, Stu needs to play more. He needs to play more than 19 minutes. Duren was a -7 in the Pistons' 10-point loss. Stu was an exact even in a 10-point loss. So, game-to-game plus-minus isn't always, I would mostly recommend not using it. But when it matches the eye test like it did tonight, it can be, pretty telling. Also, if you just go, you don't even have to go just game to game. You can do a full season-on summary for the Detroit Pistons this year. When Isaiah Stewart's on the floor, the Pistons have a better defense by 7.8 points. On the court, 105.1 defensive rating. When he's off the court, it's 112.9. 7.8 difference. When Jalen Duren is on the floor, the Detroit Pistons have a 112.6 defensive rating, and it gets 5.5 points better when he leaves the floor. To go even further with this, the only rotational player, actually, not even the only, Isaiah Stewart is the highest rotational player to play consistently for the Detroit Pistons. He has the highest on-off difference of any Piston player at plus 8.8. There is the biggest swing of events for the Detroit Pistons on the floor when Stu goes from playing to sitting. It's the biggest swing of events. And it all has to do defensively. Stu has also gotten a lot better as a finisher in the pick and roll. That's helping a lot. He's also starting to shoot a little bit more threes. He shot 2 this game. He shot 2 last game. He's starting to shoot threes, which is really big. They need him to take threes. But they need Stu. You got to play Stu more. I get you want to play Duren. I'm not saying to not play Duren at all. Duren needs to be developed. You can still play him a lot of minutes. But especially, and even without this, most games I probably would just close with Stu because he's a better option right now. But especially against what happened in this game, there was a possession, that possession I mentioned earlier in the game, or earlier in this podcast, where Vucevic walked into a wide open 3 at the top of the key, and Duren was just underneath the rim, and then the Pistons called a timeout right after. That right there was such an egregious mistake. I'm going to break it down on the podcast tomorrow, or on my personal YouTube tomorrow. But if you watch the game, you know what play I'm talking about. That is such an egregious mistake to have the person guarding him, who's already hit 4 threes in this game, 4 or 5 threes, and you're underneath the rim and he's just walking into a wide open 3. I mean, that's just egregious. That's just an that was borderline, I believe, a borderline sit you for the rest of the game mistake. So, in a game like this against stretch bigs, Stu has to get played a lot more than 19 minutes. He just has to be. He gives the Pistons a better chance to win in these situations, in these matchups. He just has to play more. And like I said, I understand the optics. I understand the personalities, managing personalities in the locker room. I get all of it. But look, Stu just gives the Pistons a better chance to win in these matchups. You got to give them more than 19 minutes. You just got to. But that's all I've got for you guys today, man. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Subscribe to my personal YouTube channel at Kuka Hill. Subscribe to the Locked On Pistons Daily Newsletter. Subscribe to the Locked On Pistons Insiders Program. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out, everybody.